Now today's little project I wanted to share with some of my friends, many of whom seem interested in this kind of stuff. And I wanted to show this. This is a fender that belongs to Vlad's Moto Guzzi Coppa Italia. Now what happened with this fender is, I think it's a part that came from overseas, but I'm not sure. And it had a relatively nice finish on it. There was really nothing wrong with it. But Vlad wanted to add this little decal. So he had this decal custom made, and it looks really nice. Now when I put the decal on, a lot of people, and I'm not trying to be judgmental or anything, but a lot of people would have been very happy just to put the decal on, go ride the bike. Well, at some point in time, no, and I like to do it, I like to bury all my decals so that you really can't feel it as you rub your hand over it, and it also tends to keep it from peeling up at the edge. Now if you've noticed, if you go and look at some even high-end bikes, you know, you're looking at the corners are peeling up and it's a mess. And some bikes, to their credit, have covered it with clear. So you can be the judge of whether that's worth it or not. Step one on this project was I took the whole fender and sanded it out, 400 sandpaper, so I could get a good grip to the clear. Put on, of course, put the decal on, put several coats of clear. And what happened with the clear is, because this decal is really thick, this is really way thicker than it would be if we used the decals that you make with an inkjet printer. This was really thick, so it really required several sandings, and I put 2 coats of clear, sanded it, 2 coats of clear. I ultimately wound up with about 10 coats of clear on this, and about 4 or 5 times sanding it out. But at the very end, once this dries out, and this is a really nice way to do this if you can do it this way. I painted the last coats of clear on a nice sunny morning and put it out in the sun to dry, and every time I walked by I moved it so the sun would be hitting a different part of it. In essence what it did, it kind of baked the paint in. The paint got harder a lot quicker than it would, say, in the winter when it's cold and you better wait 2 or 3 days. This paint is ready to go. So the next step on this is 2500 grit paper. And again, any body shop supply that I know, and Gavin's especially where I buy this stuff, you can buy 1 sheet, you can buy a stack, you can buy 1 little piece. What happens with this is 2000 grit. You can use 2000 grit. It just means there's a lot more work. Some people even use 1500 grit. But then you've got sanding scratches you've got to get out. With 2500 grit and this medium cut compound, there's no sanding scratches. So the job is really, and I don't need to do the whole fender here, but I do want to show one. I want to show the spot where the decal is. So what I need to do is, and this is time consuming, so we don't need to do, like I said, if we were sanding out the whole fender, it'd probably take, well, you'd be bored. You're probably bored already. What am I talking about? I know Chris is bored. She's bored listening to me all the time. But anyway, I want to get this area flat, and I'll just do the front of the fender to show. And then you can compare the new finish to the old finish. Now, you can also do this to a motorcycle that's 20 years old. If the paint is in good condition, you can sand it with 2500 grit, just like what I'm doing right here. Soapy water, a little bit of dish soap in the water. You don't want to overdo it because some manufacturers are really cheap with the paint. I've had some bikes, and even high-end bikes, that I've gone, and all of a sudden I'm through the paint. Don't want to mention any names because among my friends we have lovers of every brand and whatever. But if there's a decent amount of clear on there, of course, you're not going to be able to sand through. Now, what I'm trying to do is not sand in this direction. I want to sand in this direction, then in this direction. In an all perfect world, I'd have like an orbital sander, but when you do it by hand, and again, if I wasn't shooting video, what I'd do is I'd put my knee under here. That makes it a little bit easier. Or here's another trick that seems to work on certain parts. Maybe this is one of them. I can put a paper towel under there to hold it. Just makes it easier to sand. Now the thing is, you've got to get it flat. The idea of doing this, and actually another thing people don't understand, if you're trying to polish a piece of aluminum and you really want to get it to look like chrome, you've got to sand it with some kind of very, very fine grit paper first and get it flat and dull. And then the polishing part is relatively easy. And again, I'm not trying to overdo this. I'd like to just see this front piece of the fender. And so we could do a little comparison on it now. What I did with my R1, when I bought the R1 in '09, and the quality of the paint was really pretty good, but I was going to repaint some of the parts. I made some parts and I repainted some parts, and I used color match, Color-Rite, I mean factory paint, so it was a pretty good match. And my friend Bob Brookins got me some paint that was matched. I was going to do other parts with it, so I had a nice selection of paints to work with. And what I found out was the paint that came from the factory, if I took the parts that I didn't paint, about half of the bike is painted, the seat, the back piece, the lower cowl, the side pieces, but the parts that the factory painted, if I took the 2500 grit and just did exactly what I'm doing now, and then took my little buffing wheel with some of the 4C, it just polished up to the point where if you put that bike right next to a showroom bike, anybody with, you know, an eye for detail would notice right away that one was a little bit shinier and more polished looking. And as an example, if you've looked at any of the real high-end cars, the Lambos and the Ferraris and stuff, they're all painted, sanded between coats, buffed at the end. I've seen some of the things on TV about how they do some of the high-end Porsches. And again, we're certainly not worried about that right now. Anyway, what I want to show, and it doesn't matter here, I have to kind of look at this now. And sometimes sharing this information is good, and sometimes sharing it, even if you're not interested in doing any of these upgrades to your bike, well, or to anything. Model plane guys love to look at this stuff. Okay, let me show this up close now. It's in flat. Here it is, nice and shiny. This is the final coat of clear, and that's dull as we're going to be able to make it. Now, this is the part that gets tricky. Here's a $15 at Harbor Freight. If you have the coupon, it's $12. So these things, and they do wear out. In fact, Lauren wore out my last one on her Ducati. I had to go buy one. What I do now is I just buy two at a time because I use them in a way that they're probably not made to be used. I use them many, many hours. So anyway, the first thing to remember about this is the pad. You're supposed to be able to take these pads off. Let me just take this one off first and show you. This one was used, whenever you see it black like that, it means we were polishing metal, probably aluminum with this. I don't know what part, because with 8 bikes you don't know what you're polishing last. And I always save the old pads. And what happens is this, like example, if you're polishing aluminum, you could use this. It wouldn't matter. But you can buy the new pads for $5 or whatever they cost. We have a brand new one here. And what's really nice to do, if you're going to use a compound, this is an extremely high-end, good, made in Germany compound. But Meguiar's makes a good one, and other people make one, and I've heard they even sell one in Walmart that's good, but I don't have any. So I always want to start with a brand new pad if possible. Make sure it's nice and straight. Now this comes in 3 grades. It comes rough, medium, you can see I have this marked medium, and ultra fine. On a job like this I don't really need the ultra fine. This is going to make it as shiny as you can imagine. If this doesn't make it shiny, we did something wrong. Or if it doesn't shine right up, one of the problems can be that the paint is still too soft. An example, if you're painting in the middle of the winter, you don't want to get any nasty stuff on there. When you paint in the winter, you've got to always at least I do, let the paint dry a couple extra days. The longer the better, and if you can put it by a radiator or a heating vent, even better. But a new pad will always be a good choice. It'll just result in a nicer job. And again, if you can grab, every part is different. If you can somehow hold the part. Now what I'll do, of course, is when this is done, I'll resand the whole fender and just redo the part. Now if we were doing a bike that was still in one piece and we sanded that with 2500 grit, hey, you don't want to sand all the paint off the bike either. You just want to make it flat. And this material, the medium grade, it's 8021, really leaves a super nice shine. This is just one of the nicest compounds I've found. The Meguiar's stuff is good, but if you do the sanding with 2500 grit, what you're going to find out, there'll be no scratches. You'll just have a perfectly smooth surface when you're done. And people that really know, like people that go to bike shows, and I don't, of course, people that really treasure having something that looks like it's handmade, custom made. All the model planes I made over the years, I took a lot of pride in making sure they were as nice as I could make them. Now the model plane guys have a thing that they go where the colors change from red to white or blue to green or whatever, and when they judge them at the Nationals, they try to run their hand over it and not feel the seam. Well, car guys usually have some guy come in with a pinstriping brush, even Chip Foose. Now come on, Chip, get with the program. They put that pinstripe there. What happens after you wash the car 100 times? The pinstripe starts coming off, and then you got to call Mr. Pinstripe back and have him redo it. Well, this system that I use, you never have to call anybody. It's forever. Takes a little more time in the beginning, a little more work, a little more effort, a little more money, of course, for the material, but in the end, it's like building something that's going to last a much longer time. And anybody in the world of motorcycling or model planes or in car shows, or I've found even Karen can appreciate this level of quality. There's almost no substitute for the level of quality. You can see it, you can feel it, you can touch it. And our objective here is, when we're done, is that decal is buried and clear. It will not peel up at the corners or the edges, unless this is a really cheesy decal, and I don't know if it is. Now, as I take this, I really should use a clean microfiber. I just didn't have one. Now, I'm not sure that you can even see the difference. It takes a discerning eye to see that this has a texture to it, a very fine texture, which all paint does. But up here, and I'm not sure if you can really see the difference. I'm sure I can. I'm sure people that judge the model planes at the Nationals can see the difference. And that's basically what's involved. And so what I'll do now is, and it's not a big, I'm going to sand the rest of the fender with the soapy water, spend a half hour, 45 minutes more buffing this out, and when it's done, it's like you could just rub it on your, oh, it even feels nice. I always tell Luciano do that. Yeah. Anyway, if you have the patience and the energy, you can really upgrade the look of your bike by a significant amount, and that you can't feel where that decal is. So that really came out, I think, just about as nice as. And I know Vlad, for instance, is one of the people that really truly appreciates really high quality stuff. So I hope this little video, and my email address is windyu@AOL, and you can subscribe to the videos, or you can trash them, or tell your friends that. Windy's been eating too much bacon, I don't know. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that.